Hello, geeks, and welcome back to Geeking Off the Page. I'm Trevor in the safety of my own home and office,
And I'm not. I'm Mike Kitchen. I'm stranded in the car in the Canadian wilderness fighting mosquitoes and avoiding my family.
yeah, I don't think I'd have the guts to go record from my car. I mean, I could, but I'm not going to because I don't have to. Anyways, so this week has been a little slower than others. Disney Plus really hasn't had anything since they finished Kenobi last week.
Oh, they finished Kenobi, all right.
Yeah, they did. They certainly finished it. So this week we had The Boys, we had Miss Marvel. Did you watch Star Trek New Horizons there, Mike?
I did not see that.
All right. How about The Orville?
I watched basically nothing this week.
All right. Well, I didn't get a chance to see Orville or Star Trek, so I don't think we're going to talk about those.
I'll say the one thing I did watch was Herogasm, and that was just based on comments from last podcast. So I have some things to say about that.
That's fine. That's fine. I'll talk about the latest episode. Here comes a candle to light you to light you to bed. As well as I'll talk about Miss Marvel. My girls came home from camp, so we watched some Alone. My wife and I, while waiting for the girls to come home, we started season 2 without them. So we're halfway through season 2 and halfway through season 1 at the same time, which gets a little confusing at times. Trying to keep in mind who's who because it's all in the same location.
Yeah, same location exactly.
But still enjoying both seasons a lot. Can't wait. I'm enjoying the hell out of it Alone. So, yeah, it's so much fun, and I can't believe I got 6.5 more seasons to get through. I mean, this is gonna be fun getting through all this. Anyways, we'll jump to Alone after. So what do you want? Do you want to talk about The Boys first?
Sure, let's get into The Boys.
I know you're running on battery power, so I don't want you to die mid rant. So
yeah, you don't want to die halfway through Herogasm.
Yes, exactly. All right, so take it away.
Okay, so as I've said previous podcasts, I have not watched the entire series. Huge Garth Ennis fan. Was never a fan of the Boys comic. More of a Punisher Max fan. That's where I'm at. Or Garth Ennis War comics. But, there's a lot of hype around this series. The fellow geeks have been saying lots of good things about it. It's been getting lots of good online praise. And then last week's episode happened. And it's like, okay, no, let's just cut to the chase and see what the Herogasm is all about. So again, I've never read that one in the comics, and the hype for this has been insane. And for the most part, it lived up to the hype. I would say it didn't quite go as extreme as I thought it would.
I'm going to quickly jump in there. I did just finish reading an article where the director said, unfortunately, this was shot heavily during COVID period. So
that was COVID?
This was during COVID. So they had to cut back the cast by a significant amount. That house was supposed to be packed full of people. And that's the way the
script... COVID rules, like you have to live in the same house, like you have to be family or
there's
related somehow.
No,
that's creepy.
At the time you had to be sequestering with the same people so that if one person got it, then everyone's kind of quarantined. So because they did have a fair number of people in there, but they were supposed to have 4 times as many people. So for every one person you see on the screen, there was supposed to be at least 3 more people on the screen with them at the same time. Like it was supposed to be people are shoving through crowds of people as this is happening. So when I read that comment, I was like, man, if they could have shot this the way they wanted to, it would have been that much more. So with that in mind,
director's cut.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so I think other series have taken it farther. I think Game of Thrones did a lot more stuff that was way more intense and more shocking. Even The Witcher, there's that one scene. What's her name? Purple-eyed witch girl.
Yennefer?
Yeah, Yennefer. Okay, so when she's got that whole castle under her spell, that was a pretty crazy thing. Obviously, less superpowers, but a little more shocking.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I built it up in my mind so big that it was less than what I had expected. Yet at the same time, as far as superhero shows, it's like, yeah, they went pretty hardcore. And it's funny because everything you said last week with like the different superpowers being involved, let's say, it's like, oh, there's that one. Oh, there's that one. Hey, there's that one.
I'm still haunted by Love Muscle running away after the blast, carrying a part of himself that has been heavily scorched, knowing that he may have lost his superpowers. So now he has to live with this and have no control over it. That's the part that terrifies me. I was just like, oh God, that's like every guy's like, man, I wish my dick was that big. But then when you're faced with the reality that it's burnt, it's probably not going to be healing that well. It probably hurts like hell. And now you have zero control over what used to be a prehensile limb. Yeah. You're looking for some amputation at some point.
Yeah, first world problems.
Oh, definitely. That's not first world problems. Don't even aspire that high.
So, anyways, that was my thoughts on that episode of The Boy. Like, I'm glad I watched it just to kind of, skip ahead, see what all the fuss was about, be able to chime in on it. And, eventually sometime I'll have to skip back in time and
catch all
start from the beginning. Yeah.
I still like the show. If I hadn't watched it yet and someone said, oh, you try this, I would probably end up binging the whole thing because it's just so much fun for me to watch. Which leads us to episode 7 of season 3. With this is where they're kind of like some of the aftermath of like Starlight quitting the Seven, stuff like that. And this episode takes a little bit of an off twist because we find out more about the character who has been, in essence, quiet through the whole episode, Black Noir. He's been quiet through the whole series because he doesn't talk. We briefly see him in a flashback with his mask off, talking, and that was the only time we heard his voice. And this episode deals with. So in the previous episode, Homelander was like clapping Noir on the back, saying, "Glad I've got you on my side, buddy." And then they find the note where he's fucked off. He's left. And they're like, and Homelander's like, he was supposed to have my back, and doesn't. So, and we find out that Noir worked with the team Payback. They're the team that Soldier Boy was a part of, to specifically get rid of Soldier Boy, like sell him to the Russians as an experiment. He was killing the team. Like, you find out that Noir was supposed to be Axel Foley in Beverly Hills Cop, but Homelander killed his chances at getting the role. And then when he said, well, why are you doing this, in a very nicely animated 2D animated like little flashback, Soldier Boy beat the shit out of Noir, like just beat the hell of him. But it's all done with cartoon characters. And what it is, we're in we're in a almost like a Chuck E. Cheese pizza parlor thing with all these characters on the wall that in Noir's imagination has brought them to life. They're still 2D animated. Like, it's like Who Framed Roger Rabbit in a way, but they set up a stage play for them, and they're reenacting his interaction with Soldier Boy, who's like this giant American Eagle character, and he's like this sheep character, and they're dressed in their costumes, but it's all beautifully hand drawn, nice fluid animation, very violent animation. It's fun to, as an animator, I was getting a big kick out of it. It was like, I want to know who did this, because they did a really bang up job on this. But yeah, we get to get a lot of the backstory of Noir and why he did what he did and why he does what he does. At the same time, that's like the B story that's going on. The A story is Butcher, Huey, and Soldier Boy are tracking down the last member of Payback, the mentalist guy, who uses power to lock Butcher into an endless nightmare cycle of reliving all his past life mistakes. And he'll stay there until his body dehydrates and he dies. That's how this guy's powers work. And so Huey has to convince him to turn off the powers, at the same time kind of save him from Soldier Boy, who is going to kill this guy. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And then what's nice about the show is they also have the C plot of Starlight is dealing with the rest of Butcher's team. So you've got the one girl who's like heavily injured and on the verge of dying, but has lost her powers. She wants her powers back now. She's realized the violent side of her didn't stem from her powers or the V compound that was inside her all the time. So she wants her powers back. So Annie agrees, finally to get her powers back. But when she goes in to the lab to steal the vial, she reads up on one of the researchers' notes is saying the temporary stuff, after the third dose starts, the patient starts to get like uncontrollable shakes and nosebleeds and headaches. And by the fifth dose, they die. And Butcher's probably had 3 to 4 doses. Huey's working on his third. So she's like, I got to get them off this stuff now before they kill themselves using it. Kimiko, the Japanese girl, she finally gets the V and instantly heals. She's got her super strength back. She's got her rapid healing back. But Butcher, so Starlight calls Butcher, says you got to get off the stuff, and he's like, "Yep, I'll tell Huey," and turns off his phone. Let's go now. Let's go get this mental guy. Let's inject up. That obviously doesn't help. The show ends though on a nice little cliffhanger of Homelander's in his office, doing his thing, gets a phone call from Soldier Boy. And he's like, is this for real? Why are you coming after me? And Soldier Boy starts going, yeah, back in the 80s, they had me jerk off into a cup with some famous model in front of me. And then in 81, a miracle happened. And I don't think I want to kill my son. You. So Homelander is Soldier Boy's son. So this sets up the last episode, which is next week, is to what they do, which is a nice little, kind of see what is he's going to kill him? Is he not going to kill him? Are they going to team up? So we'll see. So this was a nice, so if Heargasm kind of like, ramped it up, this was a nice way of not dropping, because what happens every time with shows is they'll have a really big episode. The very next episode hits the floor and you're like, I don't want to watch this anymore. This one had a nice way of not keep going up, but sustaining. I mean, coming down a bit so that the number 8 can go up high, but not dipping so low that you lose interest in the show, which I was very thankful for. To me, I think writing the episode after a climactic episode is the hardest part. Avoided that pitfall of dropping off so drastically that people are like, oh, man, I only wish the people who wrote Kenobi had done that. Anyways,
that is the thing. I mean, that's a very true thing with storytelling is you have your peaks and valleys, and you need that in order to gain tension and drama. Because if you're just constantly trying to one up yourself, like, oh yeah, well we did this, and then bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, there's no dips and valleys, which means there's no hero's journey and there's no emotion. So you do need those episodes. So I agree with you 100% that
you need those valleys, but if the valley dips down too much, you don't regain
dips all the way down to suck. You
don't get enough people to come up that next peak again. And that's when shows get canceled really badly. So that was The Boys. I mean, as I said, I wasn't expecting some action-packed, exciting episode just because I know that next week is going to be that episode. Next week is their last one of the season. So this is where, and they've already been picked up for season 4, which is a nice touch. So after, then there was on Wednesday, Miss Marvel came out, and so this is now Kamala and her mom traveling to Pakistan to reunite with their grandmother, who's also seen these visions, trying to find out more about the Bangle and the people who are after her, and the clandestines and what they're after, and we get a really good explanation of how they exist, how the realm of the Jinn and the realm that we're in kind of exist. They have, it's 2 worlds overlapping, like almost like a multiverse of like planets. One is fully overlapping the other, but there's only in spots where like land masses touch, and it's where these land masses touch that it's possible to cross over. Now the energy, they explain the energy that Kamala uses is the energy that makes the barriers. So when she uses her power, she's actually siphoning energy from the barrier, so she could open up a passage between the 2 worlds. two dimension sort of thing every time she used power, if she knew how to use it properly. Which was a nice way of explaining where this power is coming from. It's not just being pulled out of like, oh, just from behind your ear. There it is. Woohoo! It's the quarter. So they actually give an explanation of where her power is coming from, and why it seems so.
And again, obviously that's completely different than the comics, right?
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
ever touch anything?
I think they're kind of steering away from that. I mean, initially she thought her power was cosmic, and it could be in a way. It's more like a multi-dimensional power. It's almost like the energy that buffers between dimensions, and that's where she's pulling her power out of, which is kind of neat because that's kind of where we saw where the Watcher, in the What If, that's where the Watcher is kind of, he's between dimensions.
Oh yeah.
So he's in that basically that narrow band, and that's where she pulls her energy from. So in a way, her energy, as long as dimensions exist, her energy is unlimited. All she's limited by is her own stamina in wielding that power and her own imagination. So we meet up with these guys, the Red Blades, who are trying to, they realize that if the clandestines are able to open a portal, the portal would open so wide, so fast that their world would engulf ours and we would cease to exist. So they've been trying to shut down the clandestines since learning of them way hundreds of years ago. The clandestines at the Department of Damage Control, they're being transported to another part of the prison, and they stage a breakout. They leave the youngest guy behind as like you betrayed us, so this is your comeuppance sort of thing. They get to there, they get to Karachi, there's a big fight, and the whole thing ends with the one lady stabbing the bracelet with her knife. And somehow that sends Kamala back in time to a specific event where her grandmother it was like the last train leaving India for people fleeing to Pakistan. And it's that moment in time where her grandmother was somehow separated from her father and followed a path of stars that only she could see, and reunited with her father. And Kamala suddenly is realizing she's at that moment in time. Somehow stabbing the bangle has sent her back in time, and now she has to figure out what to do, and it ends right there. So she's kind of in a cliffhanger. We got 2 more episodes left, and then I guess the movie. So I like the way this is going because she's not like a superhero that's in full control of her powers. She has some limited control. Like at one point there's a fight and she's not doing bad, she's not doing good. I mean, she's getting stymied and her ass kicked pretty effectively until they come to a truce when the police run after them. And there's a nice chase scene through the streets that felt so much better than like the chase scene in like Boba Fett through the streets, or the chase scene in Black Widow through the streets. This one actually felt more A, realistic, but B, like a chase. Like an actual god, like people are moving at speed. Like it felt like a chase, even though they were only riding like those little trike, it's like little trike taxis they have in India, like that.
Oh yeah.
So they're not going
the
fast,
rickshaws. Yeah.
But it's still fast enough to feel like a chase. Which is something I think like the Book of Boba Fett chase really lacked. It's like, ooh, let's run away in speeders that don't speed.
Yeah.
Or I won't get into the Black Widow car chase because it just felt like a rehashing of every other movie car chase that has ever been done.
Or like Princess Leia running away from the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yes, very slowly. Or even Princess Leia running away from the guys who originally kidnapped her in the forest, who they're just bumbling around, running into branches. Like,
yeah,
guys, really? You're being outwitted by a 10-year-old? Oh, yeah. It felt like they should have been playing like yakety sax in the background. The Benny Hill theme as these guys running around chasing Leia, because it's just like bumble, bumble, bumble.
Yeah, and some people did do that, put that soundtrack on top, and it fits perfect, which is kind of sad.
It is really sad when it fits that perfectly too. I mean, like, guys, come on, work it out. So as I said, this episode is a nice episode to fill in some of the backstory, because I was still wondering, like, what the hell is, like, where is she getting her power from? It's always a good, is it magic? Is Doctor Strange going to show up and go, stop using magic? Something like that. So yeah, it was a nice kind of, it was a bit of a filler episode, but also information that is necessary to kind of fill things out and advance the plot. So yeah, I'm still having fun with Miss Marvel. So that's all.
Yeah,
I
that's
got
good
so
to
far.
hear. That late in the series and still some good vibes.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
pretty
So
good for Disney Plus.
really good for Disney Plus. But I mean, they have 2 episodes left, so they can screw it up still. They have time. I'm I gotta say, I mean, Disney Plus, they're batting 1,000 so far. So come on, they can screw things up in the last episode. They've done it before. They'll do it again.
We have faith.
Exactly. Falcon Winter Soldier. So yeah. Now, on a side note, so this is all based off of your recommendation, Mike, that my family has been watching alone and loving it. Just loving it. So my girls were away at camp, sleepaway camp for the whole week, come back, hi dad, hi mom, sort of thing. And then it's like, can we watch an episode of Alone? Very first, they didn't want to watch a cartoon or anything. They wanted to watch Alone. So they've been thinking about it too. My wife and I have kind of cheated because we didn't want to go too far ahead in season 1 with the girls. So we started season 2 and we're kind of like at the same point in both seasons. So yeah. So hopefully we won't have to do that for season 3 because I can't carry three seasons of the same show in my head at the same time and not knowing the finale of any of them, because that's gonna
especially because it's a different location. Like it's confusing enough with instead of 10, 20 people going on at different times competing against each other in different time periods, essentially.
yeah
Let alone throw another continent.
yeah that's why I'm like, I definitely want to finish it either 1 or 2 before going on to 3. So that's the plan.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because I got hooked because my family was raving about it. And when there's that many people raving about something, it's like, okay, there's something going on there. And again, like I said, we were watching Survivor Man, like my personal family, the kids were all getting into that stuff. But what is it about the show that's so compelling?
I think it's part of we interject ourselves into that situation. And so when they start talking about, people are leaving because they miss family or something. I mean, yeah, I would, if I had to go do that show, I would miss the hell out of my family. I think honestly, with my girls being away this week, this is the longest that my girls have been away from me. Just in as much as, I mean, I've gone away for like a 2-3 day trip and come back, and I think that's really the longest we've been away from each other. Like I've been away from the girls is like 3 days at the most, maybe 4 when my wife and I did our honeymoon anniversary vacation sort of thing, like 4 days away. But when some of these people are away from their family for like 50-60 days, that's a long time, especially if you have young kids or even older kids. I mean, you're going to miss them, and I know my youngest daughter had feelings of homesickness when she was away at camp. It'd be the same thing. And I think as an adult, because you have so many more, I mean, like we have more children to worry about, and all the other stuff, like is the rent being paid, or is the mortgage being met, the bills being paid, all that stuff would be running through your head. So anytime that you had a quiet moment, all of those feelings and all those thoughts would come rushing into you. And
that's one interesting thing with the show. There, people always have the reason for winning the $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, well, if I got this money, I could build a house for my kid. I could, help my parents. There's always reasons. And then once you get to month 2, it's like, screw it. The money's not important. Like the time with the family is more important.
Yeah, I would honestly, I would have to agree. I mean, because the whole premise of the show is you have to be prepared to stay away from your family for a full year. 300, I mean, a year is a long time. I mean, I see how much my son Harrison developed in a single year, like from age, a year and a half to where he is now at 2.5. And, when he was 18 months compared to now, I mean, now he's chattering up a storm. He's getting into stuff. He's very inquisitive. He's learning to read. it's just, I wouldn't want to miss that. I really wouldn't. And I couldn't in good conscience say, well, I'm going to go miss that because I'm going to go live out in the wilderness with a chance of winning $500,000. The money, money comes and goes. There's
Yeah.
always money to coming around the corner sort of thing. But time away
And
from
it's a hilarious thing because this is what people do. It's like people do trade their time for money.
yeah,
Like that's the whole economic system. That's the whole foundation of what everything's based on. But the thing is, it's like, okay, well, you put in your hours and then you spend time with your family.
yeah,
It's not like, okay, you're going to disappear into the wilderness for God knows how long.
yeah. I mean, I know as a kid, my dad was in the armed forces, and when I was a really young kid, like 3, 4, 5, that age, he he went to Egypt. Now, I mean, as a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, like that age, you don't understand why your dad's not coming home tonight. And your mom said, well, he's, his job has taken him to Egypt. Well, I wouldn't understand what the hell Egypt is. I mean,
Yeah.
who's this Egypt guy and why is he taking my dad? And
And
so
when you're that young, the spectrum of time, it's
exactly.
like
And
if it's a month or 2 months, no, this is like a massive chunk of my life.
yeah. And I mean, you got to remember, this is like in the mid 70s. So it's not like, video calling it's not even a fathomable thing.
Right.
And even a long distance international call is not that easy to do. And so it was like talking to him through shortwave, and it distorts the voice. And I'd be like, that's not my dad. He doesn't sound like my dad. So
Right.
I didn't want to talk to him. I thought it was a stranger. I was so upset. And I was upset at my dad because he was gone. I was upset at this Egypt guy because he took my dad away from me. And I mean, my dad was gone for a fair chunk of time. I think it was pretty close to half a year. And when he came back, I was so angry at him. I didn't want to talk to him. Like, how
Uh,
dare you leave? You missed. I mean, to him, it was a 6-month stretch. Sure, that's okay. But for me, 6 months, I mean, that's at 4 years of age, that's 1/8 of my life. That's a long period of time. So when looking at a show like Alone, if I'm gonna go compete on Alone, I don't want to miss, you know, even the thought of missing like 2 weeks of my kid's life, any of my kids, my two daughters or my two sons, to me to me it's selfish because is the money that important? Will it will it be ample repayment for missing even 2 weeks of my kids' lives? I don't think so. So it's when I'm watching the show, as I said, we're kind of injecting ourselves into it, and at the same time, we're seeing what these people are doing. We're like, oh, that's a good idea, or oh, that is a complete mistake. Now,
that's a huge thing that I like is because there's 10 people, you get 10 different strategies. Like everybody's got their ideas. Like this is what will make me the winner, survive in the wild. And you can start seeing the people where it works and where it doesn't. And I won't get into spoilers for season 3, but there's a couple good ones where just the way they do the editing, where one person is saying, you know what, my strategy is I'm just going to conserve calories. I'm going to do nothing. I'm like Shikamaru from Naruto. I'm just going to sit around, do nothing, and look at the clouds. Other people, they're building houses and fireplaces and like crazy thing, docks, like they're moving in literally.
Well,
And you see, it's like, okay, well, let's see which one of these theories pans out.
well, there's the one guy in season 2, Mike, that he makes all these little projects. He makes himself like a little kitchen table. He makes himself a little hand spout to wash his hands because he can't sit idle. And he even admits it. He just can't sit there and watch the waves. If he doesn't do anything, he's going to go crazy in his own head. So he has all these little projects. He makes himself a set of dice. He, just he plays a football game with himself and using the dice, these giant dice that he carved. And I would kind of be in the same boat. I mean, you can only sit and watch the waves for so long before you realize I got to do something, or all the thoughts in my head are going to overwhelm me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's seeing all these strategies, because like I find in these more scripted shows like Dual Survival or Bear Grylls or shit like that, where he's got like a whole troop of people behind him filming, you never feel like they're in any real sort of danger or any sort of peril, because just off, off to the side, there's like a craft services ready there's a medic ready there to tape them up if something happens. These guys, like the one guy who started panicking and pressing the button, or the girl who like chopped into her thumb and like severed or even nicked the tendon, but probably severed the tendon. She's hitting the button, and the first thing they do is they get close is put your arm above your head, because she's got her hand down here, and they're like, no, put your arm above your head and put pressure on it. That's what you should be doing with a cut that big and that deep. But when you're in that situation, you're panicking. And like these scripted shows, if they panic, they got a whole bunch of people who can calm them down and like, oh, okay, we're gonna keep filming. These people, they are truly on their own. They've only got the couple of cameras around, like the cameras that they are setting and talking into, but there's no one there on the other side of the camera going, oh, we'll help you. It's okay, honey. It'll be okay, guy. We'll get you a granola bar, we'll quell those stomach pangs. You'll be fine. Or no, don't drink the seawater. But we got some fresh water over on the craft table. And
well, another thing that's interesting, I don't know if you got to these episodes, and it's just a minor spoiler, but the medical checkups that happen.
Yes.
Where apparently these people do get medical checkups, and there are people that go out just because it's like medically they cannot continue. They'll have organ failure, and that's it. So, because I was kind of curious, this is seems kind of insane to send a bunch of people into the wilderness to starve for months, alone.
Yeah, you might want to check
the fact that there's a little bit of a safety net in there. They can tap out, but the ones that don't tap out, it's like, no, we're tapping you out.
Yeah, we're tapping out for you, because you don't realize how much danger you're actually in. That's why, I mean, I think Mara had mentioned they should be wearing some sort of like health sign monitors that is measuring like blood pressure, pulse, stuff like that. So if something does dip low, they can like, oh crap, this person's on the verge.
Yeah,
check on them. I don't know if they do that in the later seasons. They might not, don't know. But yeah, other than that, I'm really enjoying this series. I really, really am. If any of our listeners are listening and you haven't started watching Alone, down in the States, it's available on Hulu, all 8 seasons. It's also available on the History Plus channel, all 8 seasons. And it's currently season 9 is on History, I think on Wednesday nights, Thursday nights, one of the nights. I don't know. I'm not watching season 9 as it happens. I'm going to wait till it jumps to Hulu, because I've got 8 other seasons I have to watch first. So yeah, that's how I'm doing it. I don't know what channel it's on up in Canada.
Oh, we just find places online and just watch the hell out of it. But it's the History channel is the main go-to spot.
Yeah, my recommendation is that if you're not watching it, you should be. And if you have watched it, put some comments on our YouTube videos or whatever streaming service you use. Just tell us you like the show, because we sure do. So yeah. And I think that's all we've got for the season, like for this episode. I can't think of anything else.
No, the only other point that I really want to make is that I'm a bigger Star Wars fan than Troy. Just because you have the collector's cups and like the prequels doesn't make you a bigger Star Wars fan. You know what? Let's go there. We've got what, 2 minutes? Let's do a quick thing.
Oh, if we're gonna do this quick, I'm gonna have to do a reset because I got a lot to say about this. So
let's do a reset. I think I've got a little bit of battery life left.
All right. So for those listening,
let's go for it.
We're gonna do a quick pause and be right back in 3, 2, and 1, and go. So you think you're a bigger Star Wars fan than Troy? Let's hear it.
Well, I'm definitely saying he's not a bigger Star Wars fan than me. Let's put it that way. So it depends what you mean, right? Like, are you such a big fan that you are forgiving of all the missteps that have happened since the 80s for the property? There's one thing that I find a lot of people become such huge fans of a series that they're willing to forgive it getting completely butchered by someone like, say, Disney, where they just take the legacy of what it was, twist it, turn it, crush on it, shit on it, and deliver it and saying, this is Star Wars. And there's a certain group of fans that say, I love it because it's Star Wars. Whereas with me, I'm a lot more critical, but I'm critical towards the things that I love, right? Like, I'm harder on my children than I am on anybody else, because I actually love them and I want the best for them and they mean something to me, right? So if some other jackoff on the street does something, I really don't care. But if my kids do something, it's like, no, I have to be, like the guiding light, the fear of God, whatever it takes to elevate them to be the best that they can be. Okay, so that's just kind of the mindset I'm coming from. So something like Star Wars, which came out when I was like 3 years old, I saw them, the first two when I was like 5 years old. But that imprinted on my brain to the point where almost everything in my life was based on that. Like even in Sheridan College, remember we got the little Sheridan hats and I put Jedi Knight on the back of it for my name. It's that kind of a thing. My daughter's name's Annika. It's like, that's like feminine Anakin, for God's sake. Not intentionally, but it basically is. So when I see something that basically shaped my young mind, like, as a little kid, your brain is Play-Doh, and then you get Star Wars shoved in it. And everything from that point on is based on these ideas that George Lucas and his whole crew basically sent out into the universe. Right. So, and that's the thing with stories. The stories put ideas in people's heads and it teaches you a way to see the world. And those ideas were so powerful to me that I shaped a lot of my thoughts and ideologies based on that, even going deep into the Joseph Campbell and, all of the different like Kurosawa films and everything else. So because it made such an imprint, it's, for me, I'm a huge fan of that old original trilogy, especially the 2.5, like 1, 2, and most of 3. But when they do this new stuff and they try and, it's like dollar store storytelling. People don't understand the concept and the original intent. Even Lucas, I would say, when you get into the prequels, I don't even think he realized what he was trying to do before. Either that or it shifted so much that it didn't line up, like midi-chlorians. Come on. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, if you care about something a lot, you're not willing to let it slip. You're not willing to give it a pass, because the original, especially Empire Strikes Back, but both Star Wars, Empire, and most of Jedi, it's so powerful and so impactful. Like if you're going to do a sequel, if you're going to say it's Star Wars, you've got to live up to that. Right. And I think as a Star Wars fan, you have to hold these people accountable, because it's basically fan fiction. Everything that's come afterwards is just a bunch of people getting a paycheck, writing a script, a corporation buying a license, buying the characters, trying to sell toys. It's like, well, fine, you can do all that stuff, but you have to live up to what the original was, like what the essence was. So that's my diatribe.
All right. And now I'm gonna I'll start with mine. I'll take a couple of different tacks. First is so Troy says he's the biggest Star Wars fan, and your reply is no, you're the biggest Star Wars fan, and I'm going to say no, I'm the biggest Star Wars fan, because step on a scale, bitch, numbers don't lie.
Oh
yeah. So you said you had Jedi Knight on the back of your hat at Sheridan. I had Dark Lord of the Sith on the back of mine. I wasn't picking a general group of people. I was picking one. So I saw Star Wars in the theater as a kid. I saw Empire. I saw Jedi. Played with all the toys. Had all the sorts of adventures. I think things started coming off the rails for Lucas. I think it was a case of he got enamored of the technology and forgot about the storytelling for the prequels. Because when he retooled the originals to see, what could be done with computers, that got him all excited. And that's why you have episodes 1, 2, and 3 primarily filmed on green screens. Because he was so enamored of what he could do with the technology that the story was now in the back seat.
I remember him saying, "This is the way I wish the originals looked when I released them." And that broke my heart.
It did. It for me too, because it was a case of part of what made Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi so good was a lot of it was like the innovation of special effects as modern special effects as we know it. They had to break so much ground and do things in such an innovative way. Like when you watch things like Adam Savage on, Tested or on his own channel, he's talking about like the way they do model building at ILM, and talks about looking over the models that ILM built for the original Star Wars movies, and all the little shortcuts they had to make because of budget concerns, or things they couldn't build, so they just had to fake it or scratch build, or the fact they'd build lightsabers out of the handles for flashes of cameras, because they didn't have the budget to make these things the right way or the best way. They just did what they had with what they could and still make a movie.
And honestly, that cracks me up even to this day, because they were building all these props just on like scrap metals and random parts.
Yeah.
And now you get prop replicas and people are making the actual thing. It's like, this is a replica of a bunch of random junk thrown together.
So when the prequels came out, I mean, Lucas was flush with money. Like, absolutely. I mean, the money he made off merchandising off of Star Wars off of 3, 4, and 5, made him flush with cash, or sorry, 4, 5, 6 made him flush with cash. So when he made the prequel films 1, 2, 3, budget was not a concern. It's not like a case of like, oh, George, we can't do it because we just don't have the money in the budget. He just opened his wallet and go, we do now. So
the company that was doing it.
Yeah, and stuff that you couldn't do back in 77 or in 80 or even in 83, because it would just the sheer amount of money to be just spent on these sets could not be done. Well, he's like, well, we can just make the sets digitally, pay a couple of artists for a year to make the sets and done, whatever. I don't care. So that to me is a case of, and I mean, he even admitted that he sometimes got a little starstruck seeing like the sequence, the Battle of Yavin, and for when they redid for episode 4, the Battle of Yavin, he was able to get these scenes the way he wanted to get the ships to fly the way he wanted to, that he got lost in just basically playing with the toys. And I think especially episode 1 and a lot of episode 2 is getting lost in the sandbox playing with the toys, and you forget about the big narrative to kind of tie everything together. You're just enamored of the toy. And so to me, that's why episodes 1, 2, and 3 are very like disjointed and incoherent in places. They don't hold up to the value that I have in my mind of Star Wars, Empire, and A New Hope. They're just not even though the technology is so much better and the bigger budgets, it's just not the same level of quality of storytelling. It kind of lost something. And then when you get 7, 8, 9, to me, that was done by people who watched the Star Wars films and said, I can make it again, because it just felt like a bunch of remakes and then ideas that didn't pan out, and you had writers not talking to one another, and especially not going back to the source material, not of Star Wars, but what inspired Star Wars. So you got films that, yeah, I'm as a fan, I'm hypercritical of, because Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi, those were the movies I grew up with in the formative years of my childhood that shaped who I am today. So when I see, like The Force Awakens, and I come out of the theater and I'm just like, they could have just slapped a Star Trek logo on that. They could have slapped like Battlestar Galactica, The Force Awakens. There would have been really no difference. It was not a Star Wars film to me.
I can't forgive Abrams for making Han Solo a deadbeat dad.
Yeah,
because and going back to smuggling, it's like, no, and this is the thing, logical progression of an idea. So he's a pirate, he's a scoundrel, he's a smuggler. He doesn't care about anything except his pocket. He just wants the reward.
And then he gets the princess, and he becomes a hero, a general. He wouldn't go, wouldn't backslide.
Saves Luke's life. He wins the princess. He gives up everything to help the rebellion. Takes on the most dangerous mission that no one else would take.
Yeah.
And then he has a kid. The kid turns evil and he becomes a deadbeat dad.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's not a logical progression. Yeah, and if that's the story, you better tell me why. Like,
Exactly.
That has to be part of the story.
Now, I mean, I wanted to say I'm a bigger Star Wars fan. Well, I didn't name one of my kids Harrison. So, I mean, there was a lot more reasons why we named him Harrison, but
Dun, 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 dun.
that too. But there are some reasons. But anyways, I mean, I have like a Lego Millennium Falcon here, and I got like a whole shelf full of like Star Wars toys. But to me, the material things don't make you a fan.
Yeah. So what makes you a fan? Let's get into that.
What makes you?
What makes you the biggest fan?
What makes me well,
or anyone a biggest fan?
Makes like what a fan in general is. You love it for what it is. I mean, I could take away all the Star Wars stuff, put it in a box, give it away. It would break my heart, but would it make me less of a fan? No. Because the material things, yes, they're nice, but they're not a reflection of what Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi have done to me as a person. When I hear people like, oh, they boast, well, I've never watched a Star Wars film in my life, and all I can think of is, I pity you, because you've missed out on something truly spectacular, and you're like a 20-something or 30-something or 40-something. You've missed out on Star Wars at the best possible time of your life when you were a kid.
Yeah.
If you didn't see it when if you didn't see Star Wars before the age of 12, if you didn't see Empire before you were 16, if you didn't see Jedi before you were 20, you have missed out on something truly spectacular. If you saw Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi by the time you're 12, you're probably going to be a very similar mindset to a lot of people I know, including myself, because it has that. I mean, anything that can have that much of an impact on people at that young of age, there's something there. There's some true magic there. And to me, that's fandom. Going to conventions, dressing up in costumes, having the toys, that's all just icing on the cake. But without that introduction to the Star Wars universe at a formative age to help shape who you're going to become, then you're missing the cake. Then you're eating a handful of icing and claiming it's the best cake you've ever eaten.
I agree with a lot of that too. Just the formative age thing, because I've talked to people who are, like 15, 20 years older than me, who saw Star Wars and they're like, oh yeah, it's kind of goofy. It's kind of silly. Why is Miss Piggy teaching Luke, stuff in a swamp? Like, it didn't connect in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I think the movies are strong enough they can connect. Like, even the same way Naruto connected to me, right? It's my kids' show. It connected with them in the way Star Wars connected to me. And you go into it with an open mind. So all the storytelling, all the messages, all like the characters, it all has an impact. But there's something different when you're still at that malleable age,
mm-hmm.
and you're absorbing everything.
Now, for something like Naruto, it added at an older age than your children watching it, you probably are coming at it from a different point of view and getting something different than they're getting, but still nonetheless, like, no less valid than what they're getting. You're still a fan because it's something that it's having an impact on your life. Probably. And
I'm seeing it through their eyes is another part.
You're seeing their enthusiasm through it, but you're also getting a different message from it. You're probably connecting to different characters in a different way, but no less valid. So I mean, when people say, oh, you're too old to be watching cartoons, to hell with that. Too old to be reading comic books. Yeah, get a little closer and say that, and you're going to meet my right fist.
You see those belts?
Yeah, I look at it as you're never too old to watch something or read something or experience something that has a positive change on your life. I feel I would not be even half as happy as I am today if I'd never seen Star Wars, because there would be something missing. I mean, I can probably can't count the number of times as a kid I wanted to be a Jedi Knight. To have
I always wanted to be Han.
To have that kind of positive impact on the universe around, or the number of times I wished I could fly the Millennium Falcon. Oh, yes. I mean, yeah, late for school.
That was the greatest Christmas of my life.
Yeah,
walking downstairs and seeing this big box, it's like, what the hell? I have a Millennium Falcon. And that was one thing for my kids is, I ended up, when they did that re-release, that new mega size one that's way more detailed than anything we ever had as kids.
Yeah.
It's like, no, my sons need a Millennium Falcon in the room. It just has to happen.
This year at Christmas, and my wife gave me a Lego Millennium Falcon. I was suddenly a 5-year-old kid again. The second I pulled away that wrapping paper and I saw it, I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes. I mean, I was holding a Millennium Falcon in my hands. I was 5 years old again.
Yeah.
That's what, to me, being a fan is sometimes it's the most tiny little thing and you get reconnected. Sometimes it's a feeling, sometimes it's a saying, it's a sensation that has shaped your life that is going to stay with you for the rest of your life. To me, that's true fandom. Something that you experience as a child that when you're 80 years later, someone can go, oh, you want to swing the stick around like a lightsaber? Abso-fucking-lutely. I'm a Jedi Knight, goddammit.
Or Sith.
Or Sith. That's fandom. That's the essence of fandom. So when I hear people go, I'm a bigger fan than you. Oh, okay, if you want to be. But I don't measure fandom in how many R2-D2s I have, or how many lightsabers I have hanging on the wall, or how many Millennium Falcons I've put together. I look at it more as how has it shaped my life? How has Star Wars had a positive impact upon me? That's being a fan. I don't need to. I mean, I joke about step on the scale, but honestly, I don't feel the need to measure my love of being a Star Wars fan against others. But at the same time, if someone attacks my like of Star Wars, you better believe I'm going to defend it.
I know, just because obviously he wasn't with us in the podcast with us at the time, so I heard that on the release, right, when everybody else heard it, and as soon as I heard that, it's like, no, we have to discuss this. Like, we can't just let that slide.
Now, as I said, like, so the first 3 films, 4, 5, 6, even though Lucas did 1, 2, 3, I think he missed the mark on those. And then with Disney buying,
and the just with 1, 2, 3, he had these new ideas that, in my opinion, didn't fit with the old ideas, right? That whole idea of the midichlorians and all this other stuff. Like, there's a lot of stuff that did fit. The whole idea of trade federation and blockades and the political maneuvering, all that stuff fit really well. But it's because he was in a different place and his new ideas were in a different place. Those two things together didn't fit with that universe he created, like 20 years earlier.
Yeah. I look at midichlorians as showing the shark in Jaws.
Yeah.
We didn't need it. It was an unnecessary. I mean, he may have felt at the time he needed to explain how the Force is quantified, but honestly, we didn't need that quantification. Everyone who's watching those movies accepts the Force it's the Force. Yoda's a really strong Force user. The chosen one, you would assume, is going to be a very strong Force user. We don't need a numerical value attached to it. We don't need an explanation of how you would derive that numerical value. It was an unnecessary thing. But if that's the decision he made, that's the decision we live with. I may not like it. I may not agree with it. It's part of canon.
But for me, what happens with that is it ruins the magic, because every little kid says, I can be a Jedi.
Yeah. And
now it's I can be a Jedi if I have a blood test and if I have a bunch of those weird things in me.
Exactly. And that's, I remember sitting in the theater during the Phantom Menace and going, what? And why is he using like a lady shaver to talk into? Yeah. But it's stuff like that. So I feel like that's why 4, 5, and 6 it raises such a high bar that 1, 2, 3 done by the same guy still did not reach that same bar, because again, in my opinion, he got starstruck by the computers, by what CGI could do. And then
the people around him were different as well.
Yeah. And 7, 8, 9 is just people who didn't communicate, and just instead of making movies to move past, they just tried to remake what had already been done, but with their own twist on it. But it fell very far short of the mark. And then stuff like Kenobi, that there's a story there that needed to be told, but you've got the framework to tell it in, but you decide to exceed past that framework in a way that now does not fit. So again, when Leia's contacting Ben Kenobi, why did she talk about that time where he came and rescued her when she was kidnapped and she was 10? Because it didn't happen. I remember sitting in rewatching Star Wars just before The Empire Strikes Back came out, because the theater in Ottawa at the time, they played Star Wars like a couple days before the release of Empire. And I remember sitting there.
That's the way I saw it as well.
And they said the line of, "You fought with my father in the Clone Wars." And I remember at that moment, I turned to my dad and said, "What's the Clone Wars?"
Yeah.
Because the first time I saw it, it didn't register. I mean, I was 4. But seeing it at 7, and I'm like, "Dad, what's the Clone Wars? What's the Clone Wars?" And my dad's like, "I don't know." So it was something that until the prequels were made and they started out, now we're going to be doing the Clone Wars. I was like, okay, finally get to find out what the Clone Wars are. I've only been waiting 20 plus years.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of little things that were in the original series that it's there was a greater world outside of the Star Wars movies that was always there.
And your imagination fills in the gaps.
It did. I mean, you'd have comic books. There were novels like Splinters the Mind Eye and stuff like that. I mean, I read a bunch of the Marvel Star Wars series. And then, then the prequels came out, and it was like, oh, okay. There's a lot of stuff there that got to unpack and discard. It's like when you go get souvenirs, they're not all good. But then when Disney bought it and said, all right, we're throwing out everything expanded universe because it's no longer canon. And it was like, well, that's a pretty hard goddamn blow, because the Timothy Zahn series with Thrawn was fucking amazing. Why isn't that the prequel movies? And then when they did The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi and Rise of whoever the fuck she is,
Palpatine,
Skywalker, whatever. So it was hard. It was just like, man, if this is what's supposed to be the universe, it was like a really hard blow, but it didn't diminish my being a fan.
Right.
Just like, if you're a fan of the Friday the 13th movies, they keep throwing schlock after schlock after schlock, but you can still be rooting for Jason because you're a fan. So
yeah,
that's the way it's always going to be for me. So I mean, I look forward to showing my kids Star Wars in their formative years. Like Josie, the first watching through a Star Wars, got bored with it because, a movie made in 1977 is really hard for today's, at the time, 8-year-old to really get a handle of unless they're interested. And now she is interested. So this summer I'm looking forward to showing her Star Wars. If I can get her through Star Wars and into Empire, I know we've got the hook is set, and then you just got to reel her in. So yeah, I have hopes.
I will say that Star Wars is very much a male power fantasy. The hero's journey is a very masculine journey.
Mm-hmm.
I found that my daughters were less interested than my sons. And obviously Star Wars has lots of female fans, so it's not like a big broad stroke.
Yeah.
But just in my own family, I did recognize that with my kids.
Yeah, I saw that when I first showed Josie Star Wars. I could see when her eyes kind of glazed over, because there's not a whole lot for Princess Leia to do until we're on the Death Star, and that's a good 2/3 of the way into the movie. So there's a lot of waiting that she has to do as a girl watching these guys run around. And she's like, the cantina was fun, but yeah. So now that she knows more of the Star Wars universe and the toys that I have around here and stuff, that she is more interested in. So yeah, I'll be more than happy to show them. Plus, we can always break out the lightsabers and go at it. So
everyone loves the lightsaber. Even my mother-in-law, she was a Star Wars fan, and as soon as I got the prop replica, we had a family get together, and she just wanted to play with the lightsaber, which is great.
everyone wants to play with the lightsabers. I mean, why wouldn't you? So yeah. So I'm not going to say who is the biggest Star Wars fan. I'm just going to say I appreciate people for being fans.
Well said. Very diplomatic.
I wasn't trying to be diplomatic, but if it works out that way, then that's what I was trying to do. Yes. Trying to do
but
that.
Gavin is definitely the worst Star Wars fan ever.
Well, he's a Transformers fan.
Just say that.
Already a
I don't know why.
It's already a strike against that guy for being a Transformers fan. Hell, it's Transformers is in his top 10 movies. Now rebut that, Gavin. All right, so I think on that moment we're going to wrap this up. This will be a little bit of a shorter episode than normal. Now, coming out next week is Love and Thunder, Thor: Love and Thunder next Friday.
Can't wait to hear the reviews.
Minions came out this weekend, but my wife took my son to Lightyear, and he loved it. So sometime this week, I'm hoping to take the girls and Fred to Minions because they're huge Minions. Every time Despicable Me or the Minions movie's on, they're like glued to the TV. Doesn't matter what else they're doing; they just stop and watch. Something about Minions. So hopefully I'll have more to report on next week. And next week is also the last episode of The Boys, so there'll be much more to talk about. So
and Stranger Things, that thing happened this weekend.
I don't know. I at some point I'll catch up on Stranger Things. It's so far down the list of things to do right now.
I was going to skip the whole damn thing until my son said it's the best since season 1, and I have to watch it. And they started cramming it in my face.
Yeah, that's a good time. Well, when they start doing that, then you tell me, and then we'll start it up again.
Sounds good.
All right. So if you've been listening to this podcast, again, I'm going to ask the question, why? But if you have, I hope you enjoyed it. And
I'll give the answer. Why not?
That's a hell of an answer. I'll take that answer. Anyways, so this has been the end of episode 43. So we'll hope to catch you next week for episode 44. Hopefully we'll be able to get Gavin and Troy to join us because, a duo is fine.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Say no more.
A duo is fine, but a quartet is the best. So on that note, good night, geeks.
Good night, folks.
This has been Geeking Off the Page, a Planet Geek production. Please be sure to subscribe, share, rate, and review. You can find us at our social medias through Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Search for Planet Geek Productions. On Instagram and Twitter, Planet Geek Pod. Or you can send us an email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com. So until next bad time, same Spider Channel, may the Force be with you, and thanks for tuning in.